Hey nerdy knitters, have you ever been knitting a shawl and you wondered why you had to follow these certain increase rules to make that shawl shape? Well, we're going to look at crescent shawls today and how and why they're constructed, why you work the increases where you do, and how you can change them to make them truly unique. But before we do, let me just say, hey, I'm Tanya here at Nerdy Knitting. I'm a certified knitting instructor and a knitwear designer, and my goal is to help you become a more confident, adventurous knitter. Now let's look at how crescent shawls are constructed. Now, crescent shawls follow one basic rule. Increases are worked at the edges, and those increases, the number of them worked and how often they are worked, is what creates the final shape of the shawl. And this is also where you can change how your shawl looks by changing that rate of increase, how many are worked, and when they are worked. In a basic pattern, you're going to work an increase at each edge on every single row. So you would knit your edge stitches, work an increase, knit the body of the shawl, work another increase, knit the edge, and then you would repeat that for every single row. And that would give you 4 increases for every pair of rows. We sort of pair up our rows, a right side row followed by its wrong side row. So for every 2 rows, you're working 4 increases. One simple way to change that is to work your increases only on right side rows, but you want to work 4 increases because you need 4 increases for every 2 rows. So you end up working what's called a double increase. Now you could work a K, F, B, F, so you would knit into the front, the back, and then the front of the stitch, or you could knit yarn over knit, where you knit into a stitch, yarn over, and knit into the same stitch, or any sort of double increase that you prefer. You are basically either working your increases between stitches, or you're taking a stitch and turning it into 3 stitches, and you would work that at each edge. And then on the wrong side rows, you would just knit or purl across following whatever stitch pattern you're using. So you're still doing the same amount of increases. It's still 4 increases, but you're only working them on the right side rows. But you can change this even more if you want a longer wingspan and sort of that curly look like you see here in Helen Stewart's Spindrift shawl. The wingspan edges on that, you can see they sort of curl down. That is done by adding even more increases. You'll work 4, 2 at each edge on the right side rows, and then on the wrong side rows, 1 at each edge. So every 2 rows, increasing by 6 stitches, and that gives you that longer, curlier wingspan. Now this starts by casting on, and usually you cast on however many stitches you want for the edges plus the body of the shawl. And it's very common to use a tab cast on, like the Garter Tab or the I-cord tab, and that's simply to fill in the space that would be at the neck edge. If you just use a normal cast on, you're going to have like a little dip right there along the neck edge where those stitches have to be stretched out to accommodate the edges and the body of the shawl. So that's why a tab is often worked. If you'd like to learn more about how to work those, check out these 2 videos right here where I walk you through each of them. For this swatch here, I used the Garter Tab cast on, and then after you work the cast on, you work a setup row where you can place some markers to separate the edge stitches from the body of the shawl. And then after casting on and working that setup row to place your markers, you're going to jump right into constructing the shawl. You begin by knitting your edge stitches. In this example, I used a garter stitch edge. So I knit those edge stitches, slipped my marker, and then I did the knit yarn over knit into 1 stitch, that double increase. So you knit into the stitch, but you don't drop it from your needle. You yarn over, and then you knit into the stitch a second time before letting it drop off. So you've taken 1 stitch and turned it into 3 stitches, a double increase. And then after doing that, I just knit to the next marker, knit right across the body of the shawl, repeated that double increase, slipped the marker, and then knit my edge stitches again. So that right side row gave me 4 increase stitches. Then turn your work and work a wrong side row. And on the wrong side row, we need to work some increases as well. We work those edge stitches, slip the marker. I worked a yarn over in this case, worked to the marker. And since my shawl was in stockinette, I purled across the row. I did another yarn over, I slipped the marker, and then I worked the other edge stitches. So this gives us that additional 2 increases. So for every 2 rows, we're getting 6 increase stitches. And then you just continue doing that. That's the simple pattern for every right side and wrong side rows, increasing by 6 stitches for those 2 rows. And then other than that, you just have to bind off using any stretchy bind off that you like. For something really decorative, I like to use a picot bind off. If you're not sure how to work that, then check out this video right here. So now that you understand how it's worked, you can make as many changes as you want, adding your own stitch patterns, changing the colors, working some wide or narrow stripes, and creating a really unique crescent shawl. But if you want to do something a little more complicated, like add a stitch pattern, then the best thing to do is start with a chart. And this is what a chart for a crescent shawl like this one would look like. This chart can look a little bit confusing, but let's break it down. At each edge, those 3 stitches at each side, those are just garter stitch edges. And then we have the gray, that's the nose stitch because those stitches haven't been added at that point. They'll be added later on. And then we have this large V with a little circle in the middle. That is that knit yarn over knit. It adds those extra stitches. And then we have yarn overs. So this is the basic shape of the shawl. So if you want to add a stitch pattern, you would add it to those body stitches in the center. So you could look through your favorite stitch dictionaries or online for different stitch patterns, but you take that motif, you pop it into your chart to see how it would look, and then you have a few different things you can do. You can wait until you have the right number of stitches to do more repeats of the pattern. You can try to do partial repeats to put in as much of the pattern as you want. There's lots of different ways to work that out. I have a video all about adding stitch patterns to charts like that. You can check that out right here. Now, if you want to look at this chart in more detail or look at the written instructions or really dive deep into the crescent shaped shawl construction, I have a free printable. It's linked down below. You can go ahead and grab a copy of that, print it out for yourself, and really start playing with this type of shawl. Now, if you'd like to see this construction method in action, then be sure to check out this video where I show different shawl patterns that use crescent shawl shape construction to design the shawls.